The emergency signal crackled through the void of space, reaching every corner of the Galactic Council's communication network. On the planet Zephyr Prime, Ambassador Kethera of the Volani Republic clutched her communication device with trembling hands. Her people were dying, and time was running out. The Volani had always been a peaceful race. Their blue-skinned, tall, and graceful forms were built for art, science, and diplomacy, not war. For 3,000 years, they had contributed beautiful music, advanced medical techniques, and peaceful solutions to conflicts throughout the galaxy. They had never needed to fight anyone. That changed when the Krex swarm arrived. The Krex were everything the Volani were not. Where the Volani created beauty, the Krex consumed it. Where the Volani healed, the Krex destroyed. The insect-like creatures moved through space in massive hive ships, stripping planets of all resources before moving on to the next world. They had already consumed 12 systems in the Outer Rim, and now they were heading straight for Volani space. Kethera stood in the Great Council Chamber of Zephyr Prime, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species. The chamber itself was a work of art, with walls that shifted color based on the emotions of those inside. Right now, those walls pulsed with deep reds and blacks, reflecting the fear and desperation that filled the room. Honored representatives, Kethera began, her voice carrying the musical quality that all Volani possessed. The Krex swarm will reach our home system in 6 standard days. Our defense fleet consists of medical ships and exploration vessels. We have no weapons, no military training, no way to fight them. The chamber filled with sympathetic murmurs. The Theknari representative, a being that looked like a walking crystal formation, spoke first. The Theknari offer what we can. Our shield generators are among the best in the galaxy. We can provide defensive technology. The Mordane ambassador, whose species resembled large, intelligent dolphins, added, "Our people are skilled at evacuation procedures. We can help move your civilians to safety." One by one, other species offered what they could. The Chintel promised medical supplies. The Vargoth offered their engineering expertise. The Zenmaki could provide food and shelter for refugees. Each offer was generous, but Kethera knew it would not be enough. She had studied the reports from the destroyed worlds. The Krex did not just attack military targets. They consumed everything. Every plant, every animal, every living being on a planet. They would not be stopped by shields or slowed down by evacuations. They would keep coming until nothing remained. The Volani needed warriors. They needed soldiers. They needed someone who could fight the Krex and win. "There is another option," said a voice from the back of the chamber. All eyes turned to see the human representative standing up. Ambassador Sarah Chun was small compared to most of the other beings in the room, but she carried herself with a confidence that commanded attention. Humans were still relatively new to the Galactic Council. They had only been part of the galaxy-wide community for about 50 years. Most species saw them as an interesting oddity. They were not as advanced as the Volani in medicine, not as artistic as the Zenmaki, not as spiritually developed as the Chintel. They seemed to be average at everything. What most species did not know was that humans had spent most of their history fighting each other. While other species had developed peaceful societies early in their evolution, humans had been warriors for thousands of years. They had experience that no other species in the galaxy possessed. "Ambassador Chan," Kethera said, "what are you suggesting?" Sarah walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "My people have experience dealing with aggressive species. We could send a small task force to help with your defense." The chamber erupted in discussion. The crystal-like Theknari representative chimed like wind bells. "The humans have never faced anything like the Krex swarm. This is not a territorial dispute or a trade war. This is complete annihilation." The Mordane ambassador clicked and whistled his concern. "The Krex have destroyed civilizations that had thousands of years more experience than humanity. What could one species do that entire alliances could not?" Sarah remained calm as the debate swirled around her. She had expected this reaction. Humans were still proving themselves to the galactic community. Most species saw them as well-meaning but naive, eager to help but lacking the experience to make a real difference. Kethera raised her hand for silence. The walls of the chamber shifted to calmer blues and greens as the representatives quieted down. "Ambassador Chen, We appreciate your offer, but we need more than a small task force. We need a miracle. Sometimes, Sarah said quietly, those are the same thing. The human ambassador activated her personal communication device and spoke a few words in the human language called English. Within moments, she received a response. She looked up at the gathered representatives with a slight smile. I have been authorized to offer immediate assistance. We can have ships in your system within 3 days. The Vellani ambassador felt a spark of hope, but she tried to manage her expectations. The humans were kind and well-meaning, but what could a few ships do against the massive Krek swarm? How many ships can you send? She asked. We'll send what we can spare, Sarah replied. Given the urgency of the situation, I expect it will be a fairly substantial response. The other representatives exchanged glances. The humans were known to be generous, but they were also realistic about their capabilities. A substantial response from humanity probably meant a dozen ships at most. It would be a gesture of goodwill, but it would not change the outcome of the coming battle. Unknown to the assembled diplomats, Sarah's communication had reached Earth through the quantum relay network. Within minutes, it had been forwarded to every human military command center, every starbase, and every colonial administration in human space. The message was simple: peaceful species under threat of extinction. Immediate military assistance required. All available forces requested. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Morrison read the message 3 times before activating the emergency response protocol. Within an hour, orders were going out to every corner of human space. Within 6 hours, ships were changing course and heading toward Vellani territory. The humans had a saying, "Nobody fights alone." It was carved into the wall of every military academy, printed on every ship's commissioning document, and taught to every child in school. When someone asked for help, humans responded. When someone was threatened, humans stepped up. It was not just policy, it was who they were. Back on Zephyr Prime, the council session was winding down. Each species had committed to providing what assistance they could. Ships loaded with refugees would begin leaving Vellani space within hours. Medical stations were being established in nearby neutral systems. Diplomatic efforts were underway to see if any kind of negotiation with the Kreks was possible. Everyone knew these were just preparations for defeat. The Kreks did not negotiate. They consumed. The best the galaxy could hope for was to save some of the Vellani population and preserve their culture in exile. Kethera approached Sarah as the other representatives filed out of the chamber. Ambassador Chen, I want to thank you for your offer. My people will remember your kindness. Sarah looked puzzled. My offer? Ambassador Kethera, I wasn't making an offer. I was stating a fact. Human ships are already on their way. The Vellani diplomat felt her heart skip a beat. Vellani had 2 hearts, and when they were surprised or excited, both would sometimes beat out of sync. Already on their way? But you only sent the message an hour ago. An hour is a long time in an emergency, Sarah explained. My people take threats to innocent civilizations very seriously. Kethera wanted to ask more questions, but she was interrupted by her aide, a young Vellani male named Jethin, who monitored space traffic around the planet. Ambassador, Jethin said, his voice tight with confusion, we're receiving multiple jump signatures at the edge of the system. Jump signatures? Kethera asked. How many? Jethin checked his readings again, not believing what he was seeing. 17, no, 23, the number keeps increasing. Sarah's communication device chimed softly. She glanced at it and nodded with satisfaction. That would be the advanced scouts from the Sol Defense Fleet. They should be able to give us a better picture of what we're dealing with. The Vellani ambassador stared at the human. Advanced scouts? How many ships did you actually send? Before Sarah could answer, Jethin interrupted again, his voice now carrying a note of panic. Ambassador, I'm reading over 100 jump signatures now. The number is still climbing. Sarah checked her device again. That would be the 3rd Colonial Defense Group. They were conducting exercises near the Centauri system, so they were able to respond quickly. Kethera felt her world spinning. 100 ships was more military force than the Vellani Republic had ever seen assembled in one place. It was more than enough to defend their world. It might even be enough to drive off the Kreks. 100 ships, she whispered. Ambassador Chun, this is far more than we dared hope for. 100. Sarah looked confused. No, that's just one battle group. The full response will take another day or two to arrive. Before Kethera could ask what that meant, alerts began sounding throughout the council building. Jethan was now staring at his readings in complete disbelief. Ambassador, he said, his voice barely audible, I'm reading over 500 jump signatures now, and there are more arriving every few minutes. Sarah's device chimed again. She smiled as she read the message. Excellent. Admiral Harrison is reporting that the 1st through 7th fleets have successfully jumped to the staging area. The 8th and 9th fleets are still in transit, but they should arrive within 12 hours. The chamber had gone completely silent except for the soft chiming of the walls, which had shifted to colors that the Villani had never seen before. Kethera's people had no words for emotions this intense. Fleets. Kethera managed to say. How many fleets? Currently, 9 fleets are committed to this operation, with the possibility of 3 more if needed. Sarah spoke as if she were discussing the weather. Each fleet varies in size, but we're looking at roughly 1,200 ships in the first wave. Jethan dropped his tablet. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. 1,200 ships? Kethera's voice cracked. For us. Sarah looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Ambassador, you asked for help. Your people are in danger. Of course we sent everything we could. But, we only asked for help. We didn't ask for your entire military. You asked for help against an extinction-level threat, Sarah replied. What did you think that meant? Kethera realized that she had fundamentally misunderstood something about humanity. Every other species in the galaxy measured their responses carefully. They provided exactly what was needed, or sometimes a little more to show goodwill. They calculated costs and benefits. They considered political implications. Humans, apparently, did not work that way. Ambassador Chan, Kethera said slowly, how many total ships can humanity field? Sarah thought for a moment. In an absolute emergency? If we pulled ships from every defensive fleet, every patrol group, and every training command? Probably around 3,000 combat vessels, plus support ships. Kethera sat down heavily in the nearest chair. And you're sending almost half of them to save people you've only known for 50 years? Actually, Sarah said, we're sending them to save people who need saving. The length of our relationship isn't really relevant. For the first time in her long diplomatic career, Kethera truly understood what it meant to be allied with humanity. Other species offered what they could spare. Humans offered everything they had. And that, she realized, was about to make the Krek Swarm's day much more complicated than they had planned. Admiral Sarah Harrison stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching as her fleet organized itself in the empty space between star systems. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of over 800 ships, with more arriving through hyperspace jumps every few minutes. The Indomitable was the flagship of the First Fleet, a massive dreadnought that served as both command center and symbol of human naval power. Its bridge was designed for efficiency rather than beauty, with workstations arranged in logical patterns and displays that provided maximum information with minimum confusion. Admiral, called Commander Torres from the communications station, we're receiving a transmission from the Villani Republic. They're requesting permission to board and observe our operations. Harrison nodded. Grant permission. Have them dock with Base 7. She paused, then added, Torres, make sure they understand that this is a working military vessel. No ceremonial nonsense. 20 minutes later, Ambassador Kethera and her aide Jethan stepped onto the bridge of the Indomitable. Both Villani wore expression of barely controlled amazement. They had traveled through the human fleet for nearly an hour to reach the flagship, passing ship after ship arranged in precise formation. The Villani had expected to see a few dozen ships, perhaps arranged in the loose formations favored by most galactic militaries. Instead, they had flown through what looked like a mobile city. Ships were arranged in complex, three-dimensional patterns, with smaller vessels tucked between larger ones, support craft moving constantly between formations, and defensive positions that showed decades of tactical evolution. Welcome aboard, Admiral Harrison said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. She was a tall woman with gray hair and dark skin, wearing a simple blue uniform marked with symbols that meant nothing to the Villani. Kethera accepted the handshake, still trying to process what she had seen. Admiral Harrison, I must confess that your fleet is larger than we anticipated. This isn't the full fleet, Harrison replied matter-of-factly. We're still waiting for the 9th Fleet and 3 colonial battle groups. They should be here within 6 hours. Jethan, who had been quietly recording everything on his tablet, looked up with wide eyes. More ships are coming. Of course. We never send insufficient force to a critical operation. Harrison gestured toward the main tactical display, which showed a real-time map of the local star systems. What can you tell me about Krek's battle tactics? Kethera moved closer to the display, grateful to focus on something practical. The Kreks attack in massive swarms. Their individual ships are not particularly advanced, but they have thousands of them. They overwhelm defensive positions through sheer numbers. How many ships are we talking about? Asked Captain Martinez, Harrison's tactical advisor. The largest swarm we have on record contained approximately 2,000 vessels, Kethera replied. The force heading toward our system is estimated to be even larger. Harrison and Martinez exchanged glances. Both humans looked pleased. 2,000 ships, Martinez mused. That's actually manageable. Kethera stared at him. Manageable? Captain, that swarm has destroyed entire civilizations. Civilizations that weren't prepared for that kind of assault, Harrison explained. Most galactic species design their fleets for exploration, trade protection, and small-scale conflicts. None of them have experience with large-scale fleet warfare. And humans do? Martinez laughed, though there was no humor in it. Ambassador, my species spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other in increasingly efficient ways. We've fought battles with millions of participants. We've developed strategies for conflicts spanning multiple star systems. What you're describing sounds like a standard engagement. Admiral Harrison activated another section of the tactical display. Show me the projected Krek's approach vector. Jethan input the data his government had provided. A red line appeared on the display, showing the path the Krek swarm would take to reach Filani space. The swarm would pass through 3 empty star systems before arriving at the Filani homeworld. Excellent, Harrison said. We'll engage them here. She pointed to a spot in the 2nd empty system, near a large asteroid field. Captain Martinez, I want the 3rd and 5th fleets positioned in the asteroid belt. The 7th fleet will take position on the far side of the system. 1st, 2nd, and 4th fleets will form the main battle line here. Kethera watched as the humans casually planned to fight a force that had terrified the entire galactic community. Admiral, perhaps we should contact the Kreks first. Attempt some kind of negotiation. Has anyone ever successfully negotiated with them? Harrison asked. Well, no, but perhaps humans might have better success. Harrison shook her head. Ambassador, we've reviewed all available data on the Kreks. They're what we call an implacable enemy. They cannot be reasoned with, bargained with, or deterred. The only way to stop them is to destroy their ability to continue attacking. The bridge's main screen activated, showing an incoming message from another ship. A human officer appeared, wearing the same blue uniform as the bridge crew. Admiral Harrison, this is Admiral Chun aboard the UES Retribution. The 9th Fleet has arrived and is taking position. We're also receiving word that the Colonial Defense Forces have committed an additional 4 battle groups to this operation. Harrison nodded. Understood, Admiral. What's our current ship count? 1,537 combat vessels, ma'am. Plus support ships. That brings us to just over 2,000 total. Kethera felt her legs go weak. She reached for a nearby chair and sat down heavily. You brought 2,000 ships? Actually, Admiral Harrison said, checking her displays. It looks like we're going to have closer to 2,500 once all the colonial forces arrive. Jethan dropped his tablet again. This was becoming a habit. 2,500 ships, Kethera whispered. To save one star system. To save people who asked for help, Harrison corrected. The number of star systems isn't relevant. Commander Torres looked up from her station. Admiral, we're receiving a priority message from Earth. Fleet Command is asking if we need additional support. Tell them we have the situation well in hand, Harrison replied. But thank them for the offer. Kethera realized that the humans were serious. Earth Command was prepared to send even more ships if needed. The force currently assembled was apparently just what they considered an adequate response to the threat. Admiral, she said carefully, may I ask how humanity became so militarily capable? Harrison considered the question. Ambassador, let me ask you something. How many wars has the Villani Republic fought in its history? Wars? We have never had wars. The Villani have always been a peaceful people. How about the other species in the Galactic Council? Kethera thought about it. The Theknari had a civil conflict about 800 years ago. The Mordain fought a brief territorial dispute with the Zenmaki 3 centuries ago. Most species have experienced some conflict, but nothing serious. Nothing serious, Harrison repeated. Ambassador, humans have been fighting continuous wars for over 5,000 years. We've fought with swords and spears, guns and cannons, aircraft and submarines, nuclear weapons and orbital bombardments. We've learned to fight on land, at sea, in the air, and in space. Captain Martinez pulled up another display. We've fought in deserts, jungles, mountains, Arctic wastelands, and the vacuum of space. We've learned to fight outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. We've mastered every form of warfare ever invented. And then, we invented new ones. But why? Kethera asked. Why so much conflict? Harrison shrugged. Because that's who we were. Before we reached the stars, humanity was divided into hundreds of different nations, cultures, and political systems. We competed for resources, territory, and ideology. We turned warfare into a science. That sounds terrible, Jethan said softly. It was, Harrison agreed. Millions died. Entire cities were destroyed. We came close to wiping ourselves out several times. But there was one positive result from all that conflict. What was that? We got very, very good at fighting. The main tactical display updated again, showing new ship movements. The human fleet was spreading out across multiple star systems, positioning itself for the coming battle. Each movement was precise and purposeful, the result of strategic thinking refined over millennia of warfare. Admiral, Commander Torres called, we're receiving long-range sensor data from our scout ships. The Krex swarm has been detected at the edge of the Kepler system. Estimated arrival at the engagement zone in 18 hours. Understood. Signal all ships to complete battle preparations. Kethera watched as the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no dramatic speeches, no emotional displays. The humans were preparing to fight for their lives and the lives of an entire species, and they did it with the same calm professionalism that the Villani used for scientific research. Admiral Harrison, she said, I have to ask, are you confident that you can defeat the Krex? Harrison looked at her with surprise. Ambassador, we outnumber them. We have better ships, better training, better tactics, and better strategic position. The only question is how quickly we can end this. But the Krex have destroyed so many civilizations. Civilizations that weren't ready for war, Captain Martinez explained. The Krex have been successful because they've never fought anyone who actually knew how to fight back. Admiral Harrison activated her communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Harrison. In 18 hours, we will engage an enemy that has terrorized this galaxy for too long. They are used to fighting species that build for peace, explore for knowledge, and hope for the best. Her voice carried to every ship in the fleet, reaching over 500,000 human military personnel. They have never fought humans. They have never faced people who have spent millennia learning to protect what matters. They expect their enemies to run, to hide, to beg for mercy. Throughout the fleet, weapons were being charged, targeting systems calibrated, and battle plans reviewed. They're about to learn that humans don't run. We don't hide. And we sure as hell don't beg. Kethera felt a chill run down her spine. She was beginning to understand why the other species in the galaxy sometimes seemed nervous around humans. 18 hours from now, Harrison continued, we're going to remind the Krex why it's a bad idea to threaten innocent people when humans are watching. All ships, prepare for battle. Harrison out. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in quiet tension. Outside the viewports, the vast human fleet continued its preparations, each ship a weapon system pointed at the approaching enemy. Kethera realized that the Krex swarm had made a critical error. They had expected to find another peaceful species to devour. Instead, they were about to encounter something they had never faced before. They were about to fight humanity. And humanity, as it turned out, had been preparing for this fight for thousands of years. The Krex swarm dropped out of hyperspace exactly where the humans predicted they would. Commander Vextau, the hive mind that controlled the swarm, immediately began analyzing the star system ahead. What it found confused its ancient intelligence. The star system contained no planets of value. There were some asteroids, a few gas giants, and empty space. According to all previous patterns, there should be no resistance here. The prey species always waited to defend their home worlds, clustering their pathetic fleets around their precious planets. But Vextal detected ships. Many ships. The Krex had never developed sophisticated sensors. They relied on overwhelming numbers rather than tactical superiority. Their ships were essentially flying weapons platforms with minimal armor and basic targeting systems. What they lacked in quality, they made up for in quantity. But even their primitive sensors could detect the massive energy signatures spread throughout the star system. Vextal was old, even by the standards of its species. It had consumed 47 star systems and wiped out 17 different civilizations. It had seen every form of defense that the galaxy could offer. Orbital platforms, shield generators, desperate last stands around dying worlds. This was something new. The human fleet revealed itself slowly, like a predator emerging from tall grass. Ships that had been hiding in the sensor shadows of asteroids powered up their engines. Formations that had appeared to be debris fields suddenly moved with purpose and precision. Within 10 minutes, Vextal realized it was facing the largest military force it had ever encountered. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Harrison watched as the tactical display updated with new information about the enemy force. "Final count on Krex vessels?" she asked. 2,347 ships, reported Lieutenant Commander Park from the sensor station. They're arranged in the typical swarm formation. No apparent command structure or tactical coordination. Captain Martinez studied the enemy formation. They're not even trying to use the terrain. They just dropped into open space and started moving toward us in a straight line. Admiral Harrison nodded. She had expected this. The intelligence reports suggested that the Krex relied entirely on overwhelming force. They had never needed to develop sophisticated tactics because they had never faced serious opposition. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Begin Operation Hammerfall." Throughout the human battle formation, ships began moving into their assigned positions. The operation had been planned during the 18-hour approach, using tactical scenarios that human military academies had been refining for centuries. The 3rd and 5th fleets moved deeper into the asteroid field, using the large rocks as cover while their long-range weapons charged. The 7th fleet disappeared behind one of the system's gas giants, preparing to emerge when the Krex had committed to their attack vector. The remaining fleets formed a classic battle wall, with the largest ships in the center and smaller, faster vessels on the flanks. It was a formation that had won battles on Earth's oceans, in her skies, and now among the stars. On the observation deck of the Indomitable, Ambassador Kethera watched the preparations with growing amazement. Jethan stood beside her, recording everything for the Villani Historical Archives. "The precision is incredible," Jethan murmured. "Every ship knows exactly where to go and what to do." Kethera nodded. She had observed military exercises by other species, but they always seemed chaotic and improvised compared to this. The humans moved like they had been practicing this exact battle for years. "Ambassador," called a human officer, "Admiral Harrison requests your presence on the bridge. The engagement is about to begin." They made their way back to the command center, where they found controlled tension. Every officer was focused on their task, but there was an underlying current of anticipation. These humans were looking forward to the fight. "Admiral," Kethera said as she approached Harrison's position, "is there anything we can do to help?" "Just observe and learn," Harrison replied. "Your people might find this information useful in the future." The tactical display showed both fleets now, Human Blue and Krex Red, slowly approaching each other across millions of kilometers of space. The Krex formation looked like a vast cloud of insects, with no apparent order or structure. The human fleet looked like a precisely engineered machine. "Krex fleet is maintaining course and speed," reported Commander Torres. "No attempt at tactical maneuvering. They're coming straight at us. Time to weapons range." 14 minutes, Admiral," Harrison activated her fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Harrison. We are about to engage an enemy that has never faced organized resistance. They expect us to break and run when they get close. They expect panic and chaos. Her voice carried to every human ship in the formation. They have no idea who they're dealing with. Remember your training. Trust your equipment. Protect your shipmates. Show them what happens when they threaten innocent people. The countdown continued. At 10 minutes to engagement, the human fleet's weapon systems came online. Energy signatures that had been carefully hidden suddenly blazed across the spectrum as railguns, particle beams, and missile launchers prepared to fire. At 5 minutes, the forward scout ships transmitted final targeting data to the main fleet. The humans had identified the largest Krex vessels and marked them for priority destruction. At 2 minutes, Admiral Harrison gave the order that would change galactic history forever. All ships, open fire. The space between the fleets lit up like a miniature star. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously, creating a wall of destruction that raced toward the approaching Krex swarm. The Krex had never experienced anything like it. Their ships were designed to close to short range and overwhelm enemies with superior numbers. They had armor against the light weapons typically used by galactic species, and they relied on their speed to get close before taking serious damage. But the humans weren't using light weapons. The first wave of fire consisted of relativistic railgun rounds. Tungsten slugs accelerated to a significant percentage of the speed of light. They struck the Krex formation before the aliens even knew they were under attack. 12 of the largest Krex ships simply disappeared, vaporized by impacts that released more energy than nuclear weapons. The second wave was particle beams, coherent streams of accelerated atoms that could slice through almost any armor. Another 30 Krex ships died in the first seconds of the battle. The third wave was missiles, thousands of them, each one guided by targeting systems that could track a coin thrown in space from 1,000,000 kilometers away. They spread out like a deadly cloud, seeking individual targets throughout the Krex formation. Vextal had never felt pain before, but it felt something very much like it as its ships died faster than it could process. In 30 seconds, over 100 vessels had been destroyed. The neat, organized swarm was now a scattered collection of survivors, many of them damaged and confused. But Vextal was ancient and cunning. It realized that staying at long range meant certain death. The only chance was to close the distance and use the Krex advantage in numbers. The surviving ships accelerated toward the human fleet, abandoning their formation and attacking as individual units. Krex fleet is breaking formation, reported Lieutenant Commander Park. They're attempting to close to short range. Admiral Harrison smiled grimly. Execute Phase 2. The human battle line suddenly opened up, revealing the ships that had been hidden behind it. Smaller, faster vessels poured through the gaps, racing to meet the charging Krex ships. At the same time, the 3rd and 5th fleets emerged from the asteroid field, attacking the Krex flanks. The 7th fleet appeared from behind the gas giant, completing an encirclement that trapped the remaining Krex ships in a killing field. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a demonstration of what happened when a species that had perfected warfare met an enemy that had relied on brute force. The Krex ships were individually dangerous, but they had no coordination, no tactical doctrine, and no experience fighting an organized enemy. The humans, by contrast, fought like a single organism with 1,000 eyes and 1,000 weapons. Krex ships that tried to attack one human vessel found themselves under fire from 5 others. Attempts to ram human ships were countered by precise movements that left the Krex vessels exposed to concentrated fire. Every Krex maneuver was anticipated, countered, and punished. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Kethera watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded. The tactical display showed Krex ships dying by the dozens every minute, while human casualties remained at 0. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Captain Martinez heard her question and answered without taking his eyes off the display. "The Krex are fighting like individuals. We're fighting as a fleet. Every ship in our formation is connected to every other ship. We share targeting data, coordinate movements, and provide mutual support. But the Krex have fought fleet battles before." "No," Admiral Harrison corrected. The Kreks have fought mob actions. They've never encountered actual fleet tactics because no one in this galaxy has needed to develop them. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Kreks swarm, which had terrorized the galaxy for generations, was systematically destroyed by an enemy they had never imagined could exist. When it was over, the space around the star was filled with debris from over 2,000 Kreks ships. Not a single human vessel had been lost, and only a handful had taken any damage at all. Vextau, the ancient mind that had guided the Kreks for centuries, died with its last ship. Its final thought was a warning that would never be delivered. There were predators in this galaxy far more dangerous than the Kreks. Admiral Harrison surveyed the battlefield with professional satisfaction. Signal all ships. Prepare damage reports and casualty assessments. Casualties, Admiral? Asked Commander Torres. 17 minor injuries, all from equipment malfunctions. No fatalities. Kethera stared at the human admiral. You destroyed an entire swarm with 17 injuries? The Kreks fought bravely, Harrison said with genuine respect. But they were fighting the wrong kind of battle. They expected chaos and panic. They got discipline and coordination. Jethan looked up from his tablet, where he had been recording the entire engagement. Ambassador, how do we explain this to the Galactic Council? Kethera realized that was an excellent question. How did she explain that humanity had just redefined what military power meant in the galaxy? How did she tell the Council that the species they had seen as helpful but unremarkable had casually destroyed a threat that had terrified entire civilizations? Admiral Harrison, she said slowly, what happens now? Now we make sure there are no other Kreks forces in the area, escort you home safely, and go back to our regular duties. Your regular duties? Harrison looked surprised by the question. Ambassador, this was an emergency response operation. We can't keep the entire fleet deployed indefinitely. Most of these ships need to return to their normal patrol areas. Kethera realized that the humans viewed this as routine. They had assembled the largest military force in galactic history, destroyed an enemy that had threatened entire star systems, and now they were planning to go back to work as if nothing unusual had happened. Admiral, she said carefully, I think the galaxy needs to have a serious conversation about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Harrison nodded thoughtfully. That might be a good idea, Ambassador. But, for now, let's get you home. Your people are probably worried about you. As the human fleet began its journey toward Villani space, Kethera realized that everything had changed. The galaxy had learned that there was a species among them that could fight on a scale that no one had imagined possible. The question was, what would the galaxy do with that knowledge? The news of the Kreks' defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every civilized world knew that the ancient terror was gone, wiped out in a single battle by the newcomers from Earth. The reactions varied dramatically. On Theknari Prime, the crystal beings gathered in their great resonance chambers to discuss what they had learned. The Theknari were among the oldest species in the galaxy, with records dating back 15,000 years. They had never seen anything like the human military response. The efficiency was unprecedented, chimed Elder Kestau, her crystalline form flickering with worried light patterns. 2,000 enemy vessels destroyed with 0 losses. In our entire recorded history, no battle has ever been so one-sided. The tactical coordination was equally impressive, added senior analyst Vekmar. Our best military theorists studied the engagement recordings. The humans fought as a single entity with multiple bodies. Each ship knew the position and intention of every other ship in real time. The chamber filled with harmonic tones as the Theknari discussed the implications. Their species had achieved incredible advances in technology and philosophy over millennia of peaceful development. But they had never needed to become truly efficient at warfare. We must consider the possibility, Elder Kestal said carefully, that humanity represents a new type of civilization, one that has achieved technological advancement through conflict rather than despite it. On Mordane depths, the aquatic species held emergency sessions in their underwater cities. The Mordane had always prided themselves on their diplomatic skills and their ability to resolve conflicts through negotiation. The idea that a problem could be solved so decisively through violence was disturbing to them. The humans didn't even attempt to communicate with the Krex, clicked Ambassador Solvara, her sonar patterns reflecting deep concern. They analyzed the threat, deployed overwhelming force, and eliminated it completely. Perhaps, suggested Defense Coordinator Malvin, we should be grateful rather than concerned. The Krex have been a threat to all of us for generations. Humanity has removed that threat. But what if humanity decides that another species is a threat? Solvara replied. What if they apply the same efficiency to other problems? The question hung in the water like a poisonous chemical, tainting every discussion that followed. On the Zenmaki homeworld, the artistic communes were creating new forms of expression to process what they had witnessed. The Zenmaki experienced reality through creative interpretation, and the battle against the Krex had given them entirely new concepts to explore. Master artist Yelandra created a sculpture that shifted between forms representing order and chaos, control and destruction, protection and annihilation. She called it the human paradox. They are creators and destroyers in the same moment, she explained to her students. They build fleets to protect peace. They perfect violence to preserve life. How does a species reconcile such contradictions? Her student Pek Tao, a young Zenmaki whose art focused on emotional landscapes, added his own perspective. Perhaps the contradiction is the answer. Perhaps you cannot truly value peace unless you understand the cost of war. But while the older galactic civilizations struggled with philosophical questions, younger species had different reactions. The Qintao, who had only achieved spaceflight 3 centuries earlier, immediately began sending delegations to human space. Their leader, Prime Minister Javek, was blunt in his assessment. The humans just demonstrated that they can protect us from threats we cannot handle ourselves, he announced to his parliament. I propose that we formalize a mutual defense agreement with Earth immediately. The Vargoth engineers were equally direct, but from a different perspective. They wanted to understand how human technology worked. Senior engineer Kexnal submitted a formal request to study human ship designs. Their weapon systems are at least 50 years ahead of anything we've developed, he reported. But more important is their coordination technology. They achieved perfect fleet communication across millions of cubic kilometers of space. If we could adapt their techniques to civilian use, we could revolutionize interstellar commerce. On Earth, the reaction was notably more subdued. Admiral Morrison read the after-action reports from the fleet commanders while sitting in his office at Pacific Fleet headquarters. The reports were thorough and professional, noting areas for improvement and lessons learned. Recommendations? He asked his aide, Captain Williams. Admiral Harrison suggests additional training exercises focusing on swarm tactics. She notes that the Krex were less coordinated than expected, and future enemies might not make the same tactical errors. Morrison nodded and made notes in the margin. What about force structure? Do we need to modify our fleet compositions? No significant changes recommended, sir. The existing battle groups performed as designed. It was, Morrison realized, a perfectly routine debriefing for what the galaxy was calling the most significant military action in recorded history. The human response reflected a fundamental difference in perspective. Other species saw the destruction of the Krex swarm as an unprecedented display of power. Humans saw it as a successful completion of assigned mission objectives. The difference became clear during the emergency session of the Galactic Council, held 1 week after the battle. The Great Council chamber on Zephyr Prime was packed with representatives from every member species. The walls, which normally reflected calm blues and greens, pulsed with agitated reds and yellows as emotions ran high throughout the room. Ambassador Kethera stood at the central podium, still struggling to find words for what she had witnessed. Honored representatives, I have submitted my complete report on the human military response to the Krex threat. I encourage all of you to review it carefully. The Theknari representative, Elder Kestau, spoke first. Ambassador Kethera, your report indicates that humanity deployed over 2,000 combat vessels in response to your request for assistance. Can you confirm this number? That is correct, and this represents approximately half of their total military capacity. According to Admiral Harrison, yes. The chamber erupted in discussion. Harmonic chimes from the Theknari mixed with the clicks and whistles of the Mordain, the musical tones of the Zenmaki, and the electronic translations of a dozen other languages. The Vargoth representative, Engineer Kexnal, raised his mechanical arm for attention. If I may, I have a technical question. How did the human fleet achieve such precise coordination across such a large area? Kethera consulted her notes. According to Captain Martinez, they use what they call a quantum entanglement communication network. Each ship is connected to every other ship through instantaneous data links. Instantaneous. Kexnal's optical sensors focused intently. That would require technology beyond anything currently available to other species. The humans seemed to consider it standard equipment. More discussion filled the chamber. The implications were staggering. If humans had achieved instantaneous communication across interstellar distances, they possessed technology that could revolutionize galactic civilization. The Qintao representative stood up. I move that we formally recognize humanity as a major defense partner of the Galactic Council, with all appropriate honors and responsibilities. Seconded, called the Vargoth representative immediately. But Elder Kestao raised a crystalline appendage in objection. I must urge caution. We have witnessed an impressive display of human military capability, but we know very little about human intentions. Their intentions seem clear, replied the Qintao representative. They responded to a request for help from a peaceful species. They destroyed a threat to galactic civilization. What more do we need to know? The Mordane ambassador, Solvara, clicked her concern. The humans destroyed the Krex without attempting any form of negotiation or compromise. Their solution to the problem was complete annihilation. The Krex could not be negotiated with, Kethera pointed out. Every species in this chamber has tried. The humans simply accepted that reality and acted accordingly. But what happens, Solvara continued, when humanity encounters a problem that can be negotiated with? Will they still choose the most direct solution? Before anyone could answer, the chamber's main communication system activated. A holographic image appeared at the center of the room, showing Ambassador Sarah Chun in her office on Earth. Honored representatives, Sarah said, I apologize for interrupting your session, but I felt it was important to address some of the concerns that have been raised. Elder Kestao spoke for the assembly. Ambassador Chun, we welcome your input. There has been considerable discussion about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Sarah nodded. I understand there are questions about our intentions and our methods. Let me be direct. Humanity has no interest in conquering or controlling other species. We responded to the Krex threat because innocent people were in danger. But your military capabilities far exceed anything we previously understood, Solvara clicked. How can we be certain that humanity will not use those capabilities against other species? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. Ambassador Solvara, I could give you diplomatic assurances and formal treaties. But I think the real answer is simpler than that. She activated another display, showing images from the battle against the Krex. Look at what humanity actually did. We received a request for help from people we had known for only 50 years. Within hours, we committed half our military to their defense. We traveled hundreds of light years, fought a battle against overwhelming odds, and asked for nothing in return. The chamber was silent as representatives processed her words. Humanity's actions speak louder than any promises I could make. We are who we are. We protect people who need protecting. We fight threats that need fighting. We do these things not because they benefit us, but because they need to be done. Engineer Kexnal spoke up. Ambassador Chun, there are also questions about human technology. Your fleet demonstrated capabilities that exceed current galactic standards. Our technology is available for sharing, Sarah replied immediately. We've always been willing to exchange scientific knowledge with our allies. If other species want to benefit from human advances, we're happy to discuss cooperation agreements. The offer sent another wave of discussion through the chamber. The prospect of accessing human technology was tremendously appealing, especially to the more industrially minded species. Elder Kestao called for order. Ambassador Chun, speaking for the Theknari Republic, I must ask directly. Does humanity seek a leadership role in galactic affairs? Sarah's answer was swift and definitive. No. Humanity seeks partnership, not dominance. We want to contribute to galactic civilization, not control it. But, with your military capabilities, pressed the Mordane representative, You could impose your will on any other species. We could, Sarah agreed. But we won't. That's not who we are. The session continued for several more hours, but the fundamental questions had been answered. Humanity possessed overwhelming military power, advanced technology, and the willingness to use both in defense of others. They also apparently had no interest in conquest or domination. By the end of the day, the Galactic Council had passed several resolutions. Humanity was formally recognized as a major defense partner, with responsibility for responding to large-scale military threats. Technology sharing agreements were established, and, most importantly, a permanent human presence was established in the council chambers. As the representatives filed out, Kethera found herself walking alongside Elder Kestal. "Do you trust them?" the Theknari asked. Kethera considered the question. She had watched humans casually deploy the largest military force in galactic history to save people they barely knew. She had seen them refuse any reward or recognition for their efforts. She had witnessed their genuine shock at the idea that other species might fear them. "I trust them," she said finally. "Not because of what they say, but because of what they do." Elder Kestal's crystal form flickered with contemplative light patterns. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps the galaxy has finally found its protectors." As they walked toward their respective ships, neither of them noticed the small group of human officers reviewing the session recordings. The humans were not eavesdropping or spying. They were simply trying to understand how their actions had been perceived by other species. "They're afraid of us," observed Captain Williams, Admiral Morrison's aide. "Some of them," Morrison agreed. "Others see us as saviors. Both reactions are understandable. How do we handle it, sir?" Morrison thought about the question. The galaxy had suddenly realized that humanity was far more powerful than anyone had imagined. Some species would want to be allies. Others would be suspicious. A few might even be hostile. "We do what we always do, Captain. We protect the innocent, we honor our commitments, and we prove through our actions that their trust is justified. And if some species decide they can't trust us, then we prove them wrong," Morrison said simply. "One decision at a time." As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, the galaxy settled into a new reality. For the first time in recorded history, there was a species capable of protecting everyone else from existential threats. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for that protection. 1 year after the destruction of the Krek swarm, the galaxy had settled into what historians would later call the New Balance. The human presence had fundamentally changed how every species approached military planning, diplomatic relations, and technological development. On Zephyr Prime, Ambassador Kethera sat in her private office reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The changes had been remarkable and, in most cases, positive. The Theknari had established a technology exchange program with Earth, focusing on human coordination systems and Theknari crystal processing techniques. The result had been advances that benefited both species enormously. The Mordane had initially been suspicious of human methods, but they had come to appreciate the practical results. Piracy in the Outer Rim had dropped to nearly zero once word spread that humans would respond to attacks on peaceful shipping. The Qintal had formalized their mutual defense agreement and were now working closely with human engineers to upgrade their planetary defense systems. Even the Zenmaki, who had been philosophically troubled by human military efficiency, had found common ground in cultural exchanges. Human military music, it turned out, shared surprising similarities with Zenmaki battle songs from their pre-space flight era. But the most significant change was invisible to casual observers. The galaxy felt safer. For the first time in recorded history, exploration ships ventured into unknown space without fear of encountering threats they couldn't handle. If they found something dangerous, they could call for help and know that help would arrive. Kethera's thoughts were interrupted by her aide, Jethin, who entered carrying a priority message tablet. "Ambassador, we've received an urgent communication from the Kepler system. There's been a development." Kethera accepted the tablet and read the message. Her expression shifted from concern to amazement as she processed the information. "Jethin, please contact Ambassador Chen immediately. This is something she needs to see." Within an hour, Sarah Chen's holographic image appeared in Kethera's office. The human ambassador looked tired but alert, suggesting she had been dealing with other urgent matters. Ambassador Kethera, I understand you have urgent information to share. Kethera activated the recording that had been transmitted from Kepler. Sarah, 3 hours ago, our long-range sensors detected something in the debris field where the Krex battle took place. The recording showed the empty space where the Great Battle had occurred 1 year earlier. Most of the debris had been cleared away, leaving only scattered fragments, and the occasional piece of wreckage too small to be worth recovering. But something new was there. Floating in the exact center of what had been the Krex formation was a massive structure. It was clearly artificial, composed of materials that reflected the sensor beams in complex patterns. Most remarkably, it was growing. The structure appeared approximately 6 hours ago, Kethera explained. It started as a small object, perhaps 50 meters across. Current measurements show it to be over 2 kilometers in diameter and still expanding. Sarah studied the images carefully. Any communication signals? Energy emissions? None that our sensors can detect. But, Ambassador, there's something else. Kethera switched to a different recording, this one showing a close-up view of the structure's surface. The material appeared to be organic, with patterns that resembled crystalline growth formations. But within those patterns were clearly artificial elements, geometric shapes, and technological components that had never been seen before. Our xenobiology experts believe this structure is alive, Kethera continued. But it's also clearly technological. They're calling it a biotechnological hybrid. Sarah was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications. Ambassador, I need to ask you something directly. Do you believe this structure represents a threat? I don't know, Kethera admitted. It's not doing anything hostile, but its mere existence is concerning. If it continues growing at its current rate, it will be the size of a small moon within a month. Have any other species encountered anything like this before? Nothing in the galactic databases. This appears to be completely unprecedented. Sarah nodded grimly. Ambassador, I'm going to recommend that Earth dispatch a research fleet to investigate this structure. Would the Volani Republic be willing to participate in a joint mission? Of course. But, Sarah, given what we learned about human military capabilities, I have to ask, if this structure proves to be hostile, are humans prepared to deal with it? Sarah's answer was immediate. Ambassador, we're always prepared to deal with threats to galactic civilization. But I hope it doesn't come to that. Within 48 hours, a joint human-Volani research fleet had assembled at the edge of the Kepler system. The human contingent was smaller than the force that had fought the Krex, consisting of only 30 ships. But these were specialized vessels, research ships, sensor platforms, and communication arrays designed for first contact scenarios. Admiral Harrison commanded the mission from the UES Discovery, a ship built specifically for exploring unknown phenomena. She had volunteered for the assignment, partly because of her experience in the system and partly because she was genuinely curious about what they would find. Commander Vextal had been the ancient mind controlling the Krex swarm, but it had not died alone. In its final moments, as its last ship disintegrated under human fire, it had released something that no human sensor had detected. The Krex were more than just a swarm of predatory ships. They were part of something larger, older, and far more dangerous. Vextal had been a remote probe sent out to test the galaxy's defenses and catalog potential threats. The structure now growing in the debris field was a communication beacon, powered by exotic materials that Vextal had been collecting throughout its conquests. When it reached full size, it would transmit a message across intergalactic space, informing the Krex Empire that the galaxy contained a species capable of destroying their expeditionary forces. The Empire would then decide whether the galaxy was worth conquering or too dangerous to approach. But the beacon was also something else, a test. The Empire wanted to see how the galaxy's defenders would react to an unknown phenomenon. Would they attack immediately? Would they try to communicate? Would they show wisdom or demonstrate that they were simply another group of primitives with better weapons? Admiral Harrison's research fleet approached the structure cautiously, using passive sensors to gather information while maintaining a safe distance. What they found challenged every assumption about the Krex. Admiral, reported Dr. Martinez, the mission's chief xenobiologist, this structure is definitely alive, but it's also clearly technological. The organic components appear to be some kind of living computer system. Is it aware of our presence? Harrison asked. Unknown. It's not responding to our communication attempts, but that doesn't mean it's not listening. Captain Stevens, Harrison's tactical advisor, had been studying the sensor readings. Admiral, I'm seeing energy patterns inside the structure that match quantum communication signatures. This thing might be transmitting to somewhere. Harrison frowned. Quantum communication meant instantaneous transmission across any distance. If the structure was sending signals, they could be going anywhere in the universe. Can we determine the destination? No, ma'am. The signals are too complex to decode, and we can't trace the quantum entanglement pathways without much more sophisticated equipment. Ambassador Kethera, who was observing from the bridge, asked the question that everyone was thinking. Admiral, do we destroy it? Harrison considered the options. The structure was clearly connected to the Krex somehow, and it was sending signals to an unknown destination. From a military perspective, the safest choice was to eliminate the potential threat immediately. But, from a scientific perspective, this was the greatest discovery in galactic history. The structure represented technology beyond anything currently understood. Destroying it might eliminate a threat, but it would also destroy the opportunity to learn from it. Dr. Martinez, Harrison said, in your professional opinion, does this structure pose an immediate danger to this system or to the galaxy? The xenobiologist reviewed his readings carefully. No immediate threat that I can detect, Admiral. The structure appears to be focused entirely on growth and communication. It's not charging weapons or building anything that looks militaristic. Harrison made her decision. We continue observation and research, but we also prepare for all contingencies. She activated her communication system, sending a message to Earth through the quantum relay network. Fleet Command, this is Admiral Harrison. We have encountered a situation that requires additional resources, requesting permission to bring in the full research fleet and military support. The response came back within hours. Permission granted. Additional forces are being dispatched. What Admiral Harrison didn't know was that Fleet Command had already begun mobilizing a force larger than the one that had destroyed the Krex. The mysterious structure represented an unknown threat, and humanity's response to unknown threats was overwhelming preparation. Over the next week, the human presence in the Kepler system grew dramatically. Research ships, sensor platforms, communication arrays, and, yes, combat vessels. By the 10th day, there were over 500 human ships in the system, representing the most advanced scientific and military capabilities that humanity could deploy. Other species began arriving as well. The Theknari sent their best crystal technology specialists. The Vargoth contributed their most advanced engineering platforms. Even species that had no obvious expertise in the situation sent observers, recognizing that this discovery could change everything. The structure continued to grow, reaching nearly 8 kilometers in diameter. But, as it grew, new patterns began to emerge on its surface. Mathematical sequences, star charts, and what appeared to be technological schematics. Dr. Martinez made the breakthrough on the 14th day of observation. Admiral, I think I understand what this is, he announced during the morning briefing. It's not just a communication device. It's a test. A test of what? Of us. Of how we react to unknown situations. The patterns on the surface are getting more complex as we study them. It's responding to our presence and our investigation methods. Admiral Harrison felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying this thing is studying us while we study it? That's exactly what I'm saying. And I think it's been designed to determine whether we're a threat, an opportunity, or just another primitive species that got lucky against one enemy. The implications were staggering. If the structure was evaluating human capabilities, then something else was planning to act on that information. Admiral, Captain Stevens said quietly, if this is a test, then we need to decide what kind of message we want to send. Harrison looked out at the growing structure, surrounded by the largest concentration of human scientific and military power ever assembled. The galaxy was watching. The structure was watching. And, somewhere beyond the galaxy, something else might be watching as well. Get me Ambassador Chun, she said. I think it's time for a galaxy-wide conference. As the communication link was established, Harrison realized that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge yet. The destruction of the Krek swarm had announced to the galaxy that humans were formidable defenders. Now something was testing to see if they were wise enough to use that power correctly. The next few decisions would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The test had begun.